Good afternoon and welcome to today's Ad Week webinar, where we'll be talking about what major brands can learn from CTV pioneers. Today's webinar is sponsored by MNTN. I'm Danielle Moore, Senior Manager here at Ad Week's Content Studio, and I'll be your host today. Before we begin, I want to take a moment to make sure everyone knows what to expect from today's webinar and is familiar with the features of our platform. The actual presentation should go somewhere in the 35 to 40 minute range, after which we will have time for audience Q&A. So if at any point you have a question for one of our speakers, just use that Q&A tool beneath the video window on your screen, and we'll get to as many audience questions as we can after the end of the presentation. Also, it's not too late to invite your colleagues to join us at today's webinar. About 15 minutes ago, you received a final reminder email from us. In there, you'll find a link to the webinar registration page that you can share with your colleagues. There's still plenty of time for them to join us live today, but if they can't, today's webinar is being recorded and they can always catch that on-demand version. In fact, the on-demand recording will be made available to all registrants, and we'll be sending you a link later today when that's live, around 3:30 Eastern or so. And if you would like a PDF of today's slide deck, you'll find that in the event resources area on your screen. As always, if you enjoyed today's webinar, definitely check out that full webinars calendar at adweek.com/webinars. You'll see what we have coming up and also get access to our archive of on-demand webinars as well. Now, let me introduce you to today's speaker. We're happy to be joined by Ali Haeri, VP of Marketing at MNTN. Ali leads all marketing and communications efforts at MNTN. Previously, he served as principal product designer at Symantec, working on the Norton security line of consumer software. We've got some fantastic content to dive into today, so let me bring Ali up on screen to get us started. Welcome, Ali. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Danielle, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And thank you to everybody who's tuning in today. I don't have the opportunity to do these webinars that much, but I love doing it because I'm kind of talking to my peers, and that's something that we do at MNTN a lot. You may see that we do a lot of these sorts of webinars, but it's only our marketing team and our product team that really participates in these webinars because we only think about things that are interesting to our peers. And so, again, I really appreciate the time that you're all giving me, and I feel confident that we have some pretty interesting insights for people, especially if you're coming from large brands and you want to kind of understand connected television or the category of advertisers who've been succeeding on connected television. This is a perfect presentation for you. And so to dig just right in, small challenger brands, and this totally answers the kind of the prompt of the presentation too. What is the profile of these advertisers that have been succeeding on connected television, the pioneers as we're calling it? It's small challenger brands. They've blazed a trail of success on connected TV. And it's interesting because when we think of television advertising classically, we think of large advertisers and the success that they've had on that channel. But in the case of connected television, it's kind of been inverted. It's smaller advertisers that are really utilizing connected television to great success. And what we'll talk about today is what their formula has been for success and what larger brands can kind of learn from that as they really start tackling this channel. So what we'll talk about today is, first, we'll start with just kind of a check-in on how the TV landscape is continuing to shift. I suspect everybody here is probably streaming television to some extent. And so we'll check in on what that looks like right now in terms of where the audience is at in that migration. Then we'll talk about just CTV as a viable channel. You hear a lot about it, certainly through publications like Adweek, about how great CTV is as a channel and how much attention people are paying towards it. But we'll take a look at the core value proposition of doing connected television advertising. And then finally, we'll talk about that playbook that these upstart brands have been using to find success with this channel, and larger brands can certainly learn from. Starting with just the TV landscape, I should just say just the TV landscape, not necessarily connected TV. It's there's been an avalanche of users that have been migrating to connected television, cord cutters, if you will, and the move has been seismic for some time now. And Nielsen recently reported that streaming made up the largest share of TV viewing, which is saying a lot. Because just 2 years ago, there were certainly people moving over to connected television, but it was clear that linear TV was where most of the eyeballs were. But now we're in a place where pretty confidently we could say that a majority of people are consuming television via streaming. On the flip side of that, what's been interesting from an advertising perspective is that while all of the eyeballs are shifting over to connected television, it's only commanding 18% of video ad dollars. If you want to kind of commingle CTV inventory with just video advertising, only 18% of that is actually related to connected television. So it still is a bit of a frontier in the world of advertising in terms of the investment that advertisers are actually making into the channel. Finally, 70% of viewers aren't accessible by linear TV at all. And so if you have no connected TV strategy, you're not doing it in any way using any platform, then you're going to be in trouble soon, because this shift has been so seismic that already, as you see, 70% of viewers aren't even accessible by traditional linear TV. And so, meanwhile, what's been going on with connected television? The users are there. Now, how has connected television sort of developed? And so this is another one of those things that I think a lot of people sort of feel as viewers of connected television. You've been probably noticing that the streaming subscriptions that you probably have been growing. There's been more choice that's been given to users in this realm. I know a lot of people are currently kind of bemoaning the fact that a lot of these subscriptions are kind of adding up to a point where it's quite similar to what life was like back when you were paying a lot of money for cable TV. And so that's certainly something that a lot of these publishers are thinking about as well, with a lot of this conversation related to bundling. But probably the biggest headline in the space of streaming right now, and something that bodes well for anybody on this call who's contemplating CTV advertising or already doing it, is the fact that a couple of titans are really looking into getting ad-supported streaming up and running. Most recently, Netflix announced their ad-supported tier that goes live in early November. Disney Plus is doing the same thing. They have an ad-supported tier as well. And so with Netflix and Disney entering the fray, opening up to advertising, that's a lot of inventory that's going to be opened up to the world to the channel generally of connected TV, which again makes it really tantalizing for advertisers. Now, what's the draw? You're, again, like I mentioned earlier, you're probably hearing a lot about connected television. No matter what trade publication you're reading, or maybe talking to marketing peers, you're hearing a lot about people doing CTV advertising. What's the draw there? Well, there's a couple of really obvious benefits to doing it. One is, as we just talked about, it's where the audience is. Everyone's migrated over from linear television to streaming. And just think about yourself and all of your friends and family. Likely most people in your lives have already made the shift over to streaming as well. But really, Mountain, we're a performance marketing platform. So we think about things for marketers in the context of performance marketing. And this is, to us, been a big draw of CTV, which is reporting and attribution. So in the lives of performance marketers, reporting and attribution is tremendously important. You want to make sure that you're getting a good return on your advertising. And this is why performance marketers generally stayed away from something like linear TV advertising. Big draw to CTV is the fact that it's way more measurable than ever before. TV advertising has never been this measurable or accountable. And that's something that's been really exciting for a lot of marketers. And what's also interesting too is that brand side marketers too, despite the fact that I'm talking about performance marketing and the value that they're getting out of TV advertising, brand side marketers are sort of reactivated with connected television. They can still unlock all of this creativity, but now they have a wealth of data that they never really were able to tap into before when they were doing their campaigns on linear. And we'll get to that a little bit later in the presentation. Now, in terms of the prompt for this presentation here. Who are these pioneers that are succeeding on connected television? And really, it's brands that don't actually fit the traditional TV advertiser mold. One thing that's been interesting for us at Mountain has been, we're a TV advertising as performance marketing platform, where people can just kind of use this self-serve platform to get their ads on television, and it's performant. One thing that's been interesting for us as we've kind of entered the market with this platform is that almost 2/3 of the advertisers on our platform are advertisers that had never advertised on television before. They're new to TV, and this platform is the first time that they've ever advertised on TV. What's also interesting about these advertisers is that in terms of a background, they're coming from performance marketing. And so they're bringing their performance marketing sensibility and expectations to television. And what are those sensibilities? Reaching audiences at scale and being able to precision target audiences, no matter what type of audience we're talking about, whether it be a third-party prospecting audience, hitting like some sort of in-market or affinity audience, whether it be a first-party audience where they're just retargeting site-based visitors, or it could be some sort of loyalty program where they have a list of some sort that they're uploading into the platform and using as the basis for targeting in their campaigns. This is how they think about audience targeting on all of the other channels that they use, like search and social, and they're bringing that exact same sensibility over to TV. Also, measurability, as we were talking about. Performance marketers, they're effectively data scientists in terms of how sort of meticulously they track the performance of their campaigns. And so, again, they have this expectation coming into new channels of it should be measurable. And measurable isn't just site visits, but it's also conversions. That's the expectation that they bring. And fortunately, with a platform like Mountain, they get that consistency and measurability from television compared to all of the other channels that they're running. So just to kind of recap here, these advertisers that are really succeeding on this platform, they're performance marketers. They're people who have optimized search and social advertising to death, and they're bringing those same sensibilities and expectations over to television. And so what can we learn from these sort of upstart, oftentimes D2C brands, but also B2B brands? What can we learn from them? Well, they found a lot of interesting use cases for TV advertising. And I think the first big learning from them is that they don't think of TV as a reach-only channel. A lot of advertisers, understandably, have always approached TV advertising as being a reach play. Because partly rooted out of the fact that it's so hard to measure what the impact of it is, but we also have an understanding that it can reach a lot of eyeballs. So a lot of brand marketers have sort of owned television, and there's been sort of hacks to the linear TV process to be able to make it a little bit more measurable, but it's not innately measurable. But these D2C advertisers are kind of approaching it in a way where they're kind of thinking of it as a useful channel from branding purposes, but it should certainly function like a performance marketing channel. Now, here are some of the lessons to learn. First is easy activation. This is something that I think is often overlooked when just thinking about the benefits of connected television, which is the time to deployment. If you're running a CTV campaign on a platform like Mountain, you upload the asset and you set up your campaign, and hours later your ad is being shown to your target audience. It really is that simple. Now think of the alternative in the linear TV world. You're almost certainly working through an agency that's handling your media buying. That inventory needs to be sort of found, negotiation needs to be done, and it's just a long, tedious process. Where I think this especially matters is for a brand that's looking to have really clever and timely messaging. We see this a lot in like the social media world, where something happens, some cultural moment happens, and a brand is able to very authentically, rarely, but very authentically, able to sort of spin up some creative that acknowledges the cultural moment in a really unique and interesting way. Part of the recipe for success there is time to market. If you wait 3 weeks after a cultural moment takes place, it just doesn't really have that same impact. And so that's why it's hard to spin up linear TV advertising in response to some big cultural moment that's happening. The time to go live is just too long. Whereas connected television, it's the same as kind of firing up a social media campaign. So as long as you could get the creative in order quickly, and there's a lot of solutions for doing that these days, you could get that campaign live and get it in front of users really quickly. TV advertising has never been so accessible and so quick to market as it is now with this channel that we have. Money is an important consideration here too. A lot of the concern for upstart advertisers when it comes to campaigns is making sure that they're getting a good return on their spend. This is also the reason why you don't see a lot of these types of brands advertising on linear television, because just from a financial standpoint, the upfront commitment is just out of reach for a lot of these D2C brands. In the case of connected television, it's fundamentally programmatic advertising. And the great thing about programmatic advertising is that it's pay as you go. And so it really is conducive to all sorts of budgets that advertisers may have. If you have a large budget, that's great. You're going to be able to get a great reach for your campaign, still to a highly targeted audience, and you'll be able to sustain that reach for a long time. But if you're an upstart brand and you don't have a large budget, you'll still be able to get some action on television as a platform. And so, what we've seen is for larger advertisers in this case, they're able to be flexible with like test budgets. They're able to fire up campaigns really quickly, test it out in market, and develop learnings pretty quickly. The alternative to this is firing up some sort of video ad campaign, maybe through social, to test out some sort of creative that you may have. But in this case, you can actually test on television, which is a really impressive thing to do. And on the back end of it, you're looking at website visit and conversion data to see the outcomes of these ads. So it's a pretty impressive situation to be in as an advertiser. Next is creative management. And this is something that has been exciting to see, the resourcefulness of these upstart brands as well. Again, with linear TV advertising, the assumption has always been not only is the placement of the ad really expensive, but the production of the ad to be placed on linear TV is also very expensive. We live in a different era now with regards to the creation of creative. And so, there's a lot of solutions that people have now, whether it's some sort of in-house solution to be able to create TV creative, or, Mountain has a platform called QuickFrame, which is a marketplace for advertisers, brands generally, to get any sort of creative need met quickly and affordably. So, we've seen advertisers that in a matter of 3 or 4 days, they've gone from creative brief to a delivered asset that they run on television, which is really exciting because, again, that's something that's kind of unheard of typically for a lot of marketers. And so, depending on your level of resources, there's a lot of different ways that you can get your creative produced and out in market for these campaigns. Another thing that we've kind of seen along these lines has been the testing of creative. So a big consideration for brands as they're running ads on TV, and this is something that I think you can validate as a TV viewer as well, which is ad fatigue. If you're running the same creative and you have a really aggressive budget and reach to your campaign, the frequency is going to get kind of high. People are going to be exposed to that same creative pretty frequently. And so this creative needs to be turned over quite a bit. And so that's something that we've been sort of, training a lot of our bigger advertisers on, is that they have this responsibility now to kind of turn over their creative more frequently. And so for some of them, they have the resources to do that, where every 3 months or so, they're getting some new creative produced and put into the rotation of connected television. Alternatively, Mountain offers a service called Creative as a Subscription, where we bundle creative needs along with your media. So if you're a creative as a subscription customer with Mountain, we agree to a commitment, and on an ongoing basis, Mountain uses the resources that we have at our disposal to get you an ongoing set of refreshed creative. So the advertiser just doesn't even need to think. We make sure that as ads are getting fatigued, a new ad can be sort of produced and put into the rotation. So it's never been a better time for advertisers, whether they are self-sufficient to be able to create their own creative, or they have resources like QuickFrame or Creative as a Subscription, whatever it may be. It's never been a better time to be able to create creative that you can run on television quickly and affordably. But it's an important consideration because these upstart brands are really nimble about creating TV creative. And another consideration here also is just the idea of iteration. A lot of these advertisers that we have on our platform, they're taking that best practice that we see from performance marketing. So if you talk to any good performance marketer at any given moment, they're running a test of some sort on these tried and true platforms that they're running all the time. They may have social and search optimized to death, but even within these platforms, they are continuously running tests to be able to derive better performance and also pick up new learnings. That same sensibility should be brought to connected television. This is something that we see those upstart brands doing with success. They deploy multiple creative when they have it to identify what's the winning formula on this creative. They also, another thing that they do that is also a best practice is they light up every aspect of audience targeting. So earlier we were talking about the different ways to target audiences. There's third-party audiences where you're tapping into affinity or in-market audiences for prospecting campaigns, first-party audiences where you're retargeting website traffic, or ABM campaigns where you're taking your own lists and you're using that for the basis of targeting. The really good advertisers that we're seeing, they're lighting all of that up. They're running campaigns across all of those different targeting types. They're not just coming in and doing one prospecting campaign with one creative and crossing their fingers to see what comes of it. They're really putting a platform to work, and they're turning over that creative, they're learning from it, and they're iterating, and they just keep running. And so this is the great thing about the most successful advertisers that we've seen on the platform. They've been with us for a while, and they have just evolved quite a bit. We don't have a lot of advertisers that sort of, if you profile our most successful advertisers, they're not setting it and forgetting it. You certainly could, but you're going to get diminished returns on any platform that you do that. The best advertisers are constantly thinking about how they can optimize. And really the room for optimization here is by way of the audiences that you target and the creative that you put out in market. Along the lines of testing, and the theme to a lot of these optimizations, or these considerations, I should say, has been, if anybody here is a performance marketer, this stuff should sound quite familiar to you. This sounds like common sense performance marketing considerations. And really the larger theme here is the fact that all of this can be applied to television as an advertising channel. And this one's going to also feel familiar to a lot of the performance marketers, which is A/B testing. And just running tests in general, using TV as a test bed for different types of creative or different types of message, or trying to test the different contents of your ad. For the larger advertisers that are kind of looking to kind of glean insights here, one thing that we've seen larger advertisers do is these larger advertisers say, look, I'm still doing linear advertising, but I'm also doing connected TV. What a lot of them have done is they've taken variations of their creative, run them as connected TV campaigns using A/B test functionality, and use CTV to find the winner, and then using that to identify which creative they'll actually run with their really expensive linear TV buy. So it's not to say, despite all of the things that we talked about earlier with regards to the movement of the audience from linear to digital, look, it's obvious that our larger advertisers are going to be doing both. And the really savvy ones are using the CTV platform as a way to sort of market test the best creative to use in their linear TV campaigns, which has been really interesting. And it also kind of unlocks creativity. I made a point earlier with regards to how brand marketers are kind of rethinking TV advertising in the age of connected television. And this is an example of that. We've had advertisers, not just advertisers, with our own creative capabilities. We acquired a really well-known agency called Maximum Effort, which was founded by Ryan Reynolds last year. It's kind of changed how they think too, because now they go into the creative process knowing that they have this capability to do these A/B tests. And so they kind of go into the creative process when they're just coming up with the idea, knowing that they can create variations of their idea, shoot all of it, and without a heavy lift, these variations of their ad, and deploy the different variations and let the reporting dictate which creative perform best. And again, that could be guidance for future creative, or for a larger advertiser that can again inform your linear TV buy. But this is a great sensibility to bring to television advertising. Don't be passive with it and just get your TV creative uploaded and hope that things are going to work out for you. Really get involved, create variations, and see which one performs best. Audiences are obviously important. When I'm kind of talking about TV advertising to my peers, the part that I focus on the most when I talk to them is the audience targeting capability of it. Being able to make sure that you're identifying the best audiences to target, the ones that are going to be most likely to convert whatever the desired conversion action may be for you, whether it's a form submission or a purchase or a site visit, whatever it may be. Really, the audiences are certainly important. And audience segment reporting is important as well, because with connected TV, you're likely layering on several audiences to create like a nice audience size for your campaign. Coming on the back end of it after a campaign is run to identify and look at the performance by audience segment is certainly important. It's going to be, those insights are going to be applied to the next campaign that you run. And in a lot of instances, we learn a lot about the audiences that we target by way of actually running a campaign and looking at audience segment reporting on the back end. And these learnings can also be extended to other platforms. So you could certainly use this as a way to kind of inform the buying that you're doing on other platforms as well. Wrapping up here, understanding the impact of your campaigns is important. Something that I've kind of touched on a couple of times now is, what is your objective as an advertiser? Obviously, there's broad objectives of generating more brand awareness, but there's a lot of reporting that's made available to advertisers that can really help inform all aspects of marketing decision-making. And a point that I want to reiterate here is the fact that the most exciting observation that I've had as a marketer, seeing other marketers use the platform, is kind of like the reinvention of like the brand marketer with a platform like this. There was a lot of brand marketers that sort of accepted the fact that TV is inherently hard to measure. And again, they just sort of accepted that when they went into the creative process of creating TV campaigns. And what's exciting now is that brand marketers who are still creating campaigns for the sake of awareness, they now have data points that they didn't quite have available to themselves previously. And it's exciting for them to be able to see that data and to allow and to see how that's going to influence the creative process for them going forward. They're still building campaigns for reach and awareness. That objective doesn't change, but it's a lot more well-informed now, using a platform that gives them a lot more data and a lot more immediate data as well. There's quite a bit of a time delay in the case of linear TV in terms of understanding what the impact is of television advertising. But this data is immediate, just like it would be on any other digital platform. And so being able to get that immediate data back is really exciting to see brand marketers get that data and what they actually choose to do with it. Finally, I just wanted to talk about incrementality. This is something that a lot of advertisers deploy when they're measuring different channels and the impact of these channels. And this is the most recent big feature that Mountain has introduced into our platform. The really exciting thing about incrementality with Mountain, just to kind of show Mountain some love here for a second, is the way that we approached it. We use the same methods that you sort of expect from other performance marketing channels. We've seen other incrementality solutions from other TV advertising platforms that seem sort of self-serving and kind of abstract in terms of how the incrementality report is constructed and analyzed. But the way that we do it on Mountain's platform is actually quite conventional. And I think that's a good thing. You want it to be a methodology that's familiar to you, and again, something that's not just built to be self-serving. And so Mountain's incrementality platform reports on incremental conversions and revenue, so you have a very clear-cut understanding of what the direct benefit is of running these campaigns, how it's benefiting you using the metrics that matter most for a business. And so, the theme here with a lot of the other ones has been just accountability. And this is something that upstart marketers from these D2C brands are always looking for. They're always beating us up over is, do you have these capabilities that we get on other performance marketing channels so we can, meticulously track the performance, and which the answer is yes, of course. And as a larger advertiser, you should have the exact same expectations. You should expect that same level of accountability from all the platforms that you're using. So to kind of wrap things up here, just a couple of takeaways. First is on the audience side of the equation. The audiences have made the move to connect to television. They are kind of consuming television almost entirely by some measures digitally. And so that creates a great opportunity for advertisers. The volume is there. And so it's a really reliable channel. I could speak as the leader of a marketing organization that uses also connected television as a channel alongside the tried and true channels of search and social. Connected television for us on a month-by-month basis is reliably, a quarter of our website's entire traffic is stemming from the TV campaigns that we're running. And so it's got a pretty huge impact on our day-to-day life as digital marketers. We rely on it for a great deal of traffic. That wouldn't be the case if the audience wasn't there. The audience is certainly there now. So definitely need to kind of acknowledge the fact that the audience is consuming TV digitally, which opens up great possibility from an inventory standpoint. In terms of the findings from these advertisers that have succeeded on connected television in this early running, reporting has been an important thing for them. They want to make sure that platforms are super accountable and really transparent in terms of the impact of running these campaigns. They're also really nimble in terms of using smaller budgets to their advantage. So with a smaller budget, they're still able to kind of precision target audiences that they know are going to convert well for their campaigns. And from a creative standpoint, they're making sure that they're showing up with creative that speaks directly to their target audience. And that's really been, that specificity has been a key ingredient to their success. And finally, just the ease of use of connected TV as a channel should definitely be used to its advantage. For example, we talked about time to market. You should use that to your advantage. That's something that you should definitely let your brand marketing team know. Hey, did you know that if you get a bright idea, we can spin up a TV advertising campaign within hours? That should unlock a ton of creativity on the brand marketing side. And of course, we talked about the benefits of reporting and how that can also be funneled back into optimizations on the performance marketing side, and again, creative considerations on the brand marketing side. And with that, I'll throw it back to Danielle, and happy to take some questions here.
Awesome. Thank you so much for all of those insights, Ali. So much here to think about for folks looking to enter the space, everything from creative to the efficiency of the process to measurement. So I'm sure we're going to have a lot of questions to breeze through here. As you mentioned, we do have time to take a few. We'll get to as many as we can over the next 5 to 10 minutes or so here. To our audience members, just know that if we don't get to your question, we always make sure they get forwarded over to our sponsor so they have the opportunity to possibly reply offline. First, a couple of quick reminders from Adweek. Today's webinar has been recorded and will be available on demand later this afternoon. We'll be emailing everyone a link to that recording, so keep an eye out for that. And if you would like a copy of today's slides, you can find those in a PDF in the event resources area on your screen as well. So keep an eye out for that. All right, let's get to some questions here. Now, earlier, Ali, you were talking about the unexpected players in this space, right? Those who came to CTV as pioneers, the influx of brands who don't fit that traditional TV advertiser mold. But our first question here is about maybe some of those advertisers who do fit that mold. Really curious to get your opinion on this. They ask, why do you think that some advertisers have been slow to adopt CTV advertising?
I think it's been just a lot of like preconceived notions carried over from linear TV advertising. And I admittedly had that when I first started learning about or hearing about connected television. It just seemed to me like a carryover of linear TV advertising. And I just kind of assigned a lot of the baggage that I had for linear TV advertising over to this before I really started understanding the underpinnings of it being programmatic and looking, feeling, smelling like a lot of the performance marketing channels that I was used to using. I really would just kind of chalk it up to a knowledge gap. But as a peer, I could tell you that it's quite similar to all of the other performance marketing channels that you're actually using. Absolutely,
yeah. Thank you for that. Our next question here, you mentioned earlier that channels are starting to add some ad-supported tiers, channels, of course, meaning different streamers in the space. Do you think that people will actually volunteer to watch ads? Will anyone sign up for the ad-supported subscription plans? Great question. This is something I feel like I'm talking to colleagues about all the time. I'd love to pick your brain on this one.
Yeah, I should plug Adweek for this. I mean, I'm sure Adweek has a lot to say about this as well. The answer is yes. This isn't the first time that consumers have been given the option for an ad-supported alternative of any type of media, and generally speaking, we've seen consumers take that. What I'd also say too is that I've been sort of surprised to see how successful a lot of these ad-supported streaming services. I think the acronym these days is FAST. These ad-supported streaming services, they've done really, really well. They've exceeded a lot of people's expectations. And so I think there certainly is an appetite for it, especially I'd say the big news of the moment, we kind of touched on it for just a second, has been the overwhelm of the cost of these services and how combining these services, you're backing into the exact same cost you were paying for an expensive cable bundle. Right. I think that's actually going to make ad-supported streaming, it's going to make a case for ad-supported streaming, where people are going to be, rather than making a hard decision of, do I cut it out altogether, they now have a better alternative of, maybe I knock this one down to an ad-supported tier, but still keep it around. So I actually think that kind of pressure that a lot of consumers are facing is actually going to support the ad-supported kind of tiers from an inventory standpoint.
Absolutely, yeah. I tend to agree. I'm really curious to see how some of those evolutions play out over the next couple of months and quarters, and to see which platforms have more consumers gravitating towards those ad-supported options. It'll definitely be really interesting to see here. Speaking of platforms, we have a question here regarding different platforms in the CTV space in particular. And an audience member asks, how does Mountain differentiate itself in the CTV space from other platforms that offer CTV? So really just looking for the right platform for potential advertisers looking to have.
Mountain is quite differentiated. The lane that we carved out for ourselves pretty neatly has been TV as a performance marketing channel. I think it was pretty clear from a lot of the talking points that I had is that what we really understand and what our advertisers really appreciate about us is the fact that we make TV accountable. Some other features I didn't get into because I didn't want to make this a mountain pitch are things like Google Analytics integration. So a lot of performance marketers have an expectation of being able to track marketing performance in a tool like Google Analytics. Mountain's platform reports TV campaign data into your Google Analytics. So in your source and medium reports, you see television appear as a channel alongside search and social.
Right.
And the thing to consider in terms of being positioned as a performance marketing channel doesn't preclude you from having brand marketers use the platform. We have a lot of large advertisers that have clear brand marketing goals use the platform, but they have this peace of mind that the advertising that they're running is, again, it's measurable and accountable to them from a budget standpoint. So I'd say the alternatives, the thing to consider when evaluating. I don't want to just be I don't want to create a food fight here, but I think when considering the alternatives, some have an aspect of it of kind of merging linear TV buying with connected television buying.
Okay.
Others may just be an outright DSP, which for a lot of brand side marketers is just too manual. It's something that's meant for agencies. Mountain is pretty neatly a performance marketing channel that brands directly use and are very happy with.
Got it. Thank you for that. Speaking of budgets and, holding spending accountable, we have a question here about that. An audience member asks, how would you prioritize your budgets if you're looking to add CTV into your ad mix? I'm sure a big question on the minds of many folks who are looking to jump into this space. Curious to get your thoughts there.
Yeah, great question. This is another one that I could I could speak to as a marketing leader that oversees a digital marketing team that has TV in our mix. It really is something that I think you should definitely kind of commit to. Definitely when you're thinking of connected television as like a performance marketing channel, it's something that you want to set up to a point where it's an evergreen channel for you. If you're just doing these like flighted campaigns, at least with a platform like Mountain, you're kind of hurting yourself because like any other performance marketing channel, the platform needs some momentum. And as it picks up momentum, it becomes even more performant over time. So the first thing that I'd recommend is identify a budget that'll allow you to kind of commit to the channel for a long period of time and not just do a really short flighted campaign. It's not really going to help you out too much. The other thing is that, and this is something that was surprising to me. Yeah, I work for Mountain, but I'm not obligated to, cordon off a huge chunk of my advertising budget for the channel. Well, what's been fascinating is the fact that it has been performant. It's neck and neck with, for me as a B2B brand, it's neck and neck with paid search in terms of its performance. And like I mentioned earlier, a quarter of our website's traffic on a monthly basis is being driven from the TV campaigns that we're running. So going back to your question of like, how do you approach budget? Knowing that a channel is driving that sort of return for you, you have to make some really smart but hard decisions about your budget allocation. And it's getting a decent budget allocation for us as a B2B brand. For a consumer brand that has like a clear like conversion action on a website, sky's the limit. And that's why a bulk of our advertisers are D2C brands.
Got it. Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense here. Speaking of the performance marketing component of CTV and of the tool in particular, an audience member asks, can you expand on how the per audience performance reporting works? I know you touched on that, but just, to re-elaborate for some folks who may have further questions on it.
Yeah, if I assume this person has some sort of experience with audience segment reporting on, say, running some social media campaign. This is really the same. In this case, what's happening is when you're building your campaign, you choose different audience segments as part of your audience pool. And what happens is over the course of the delivery of your campaign, you're able to go into the reporting and see a breakdown of the performance. So you're already getting reporting on conversions and visits and other measures related to your campaign. But now you have like new dimensions in your reporting where you see a breakdown of individual audience segments that you had layered into your campaign. You can get a breakdown of performance by each of those audience segments. Perhaps you added an affinity audience and an in-market audience. After or during the campaign's performance,
Sure.
you can kind of go in and see a breakdown of how each of those specific segments performed in the campaign.
Got it. Good to get a picture of what the granularity looks like for that component. Unfortunately, that is all the time we have for questions today. I would like to thank our speaker, Ali, as well as our sponsor, Mountain, for joining us. Some final reminders from Adweek. Make sure you download the slides from the event resources area on your screen and check your email for that link to the on-demand recording later today. As always, if you enjoyed today's webinar, definitely be sure to check out the Adweek webinars calendar to learn more about our upcoming events at adweek.com/webinars. Again, a huge thank you to Ali for being here today, letting us pick his brain on all of this. Thank you to our audience for taking the time to join us. And as always, we look forward to seeing everyone at an upcoming Adweek webinar.